What's up guys, Zero Skater here, and we're back for another box opening video today. We're going to be cracking open the new Jurassic Park 2 set. And this is going to be a pretty monumental set, seeing as it's our first ever large fighter being released with the T-Rex. So I'm excited to crack it open on camera for you guys, and I'm going to change these videos up a little bit. I'm going to obviously still show off all the components, but I do want to kind of combine it into a first impressions video so I can kind of give my thoughts on the new fighters. Because I'm going to open it up, and then I'm going to go play a game, and then I'll be back, and we'll show off the cards, and I'll give some thoughts on those. So I hope you all enjoy the new format of these, but I kind of just wanted to, accomplish two things at once here, and give off my first impressions along with showing off all the components so that it's kind of more in line with what my channel's all about. So anybody who just wants to see it all opened up can do that, but then everybody who's here for all the strategy stuff can still, hear my thoughts on the new stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoy the new format for these videos. Let me know down in the comments what you think. But also, before we get into it, I want to thank all of you so much again for all the support. And as I just recently passed the 1,000 subscriber mark, I did do a sort of a giveaway for a free foil card. And I got quite a bit of responses from those in terms of channel feedback, so I appreciate all that. I'll be looking through all those forums and reading all that and giving it some consideration for some upcoming videos. But I do want to congratulate Aldo. You were the giveaway winner, so I will be getting in contact with you soon to find out what foil you want and where to ship it to. So, thanks a lot, everybody, for filling out that form. I really appreciate it. And let's get into the box opening. But before we do that, as always, guys, be sure to attack that like button if you enjoy the video and subscribe for more Unmatched content. And with that said, let's get over and check out the new Jurassic Park 2. Alright, so here we are, ready to open up the new Jurassic Park 2 box. So let's peel off the plastic and then we'll check out all the art on the box, of course. So this art, to me, is, I don't know, I'm not a huge fan. It's a little comic book-esque, and I know some people really like that look, which is cool for them. I'm just not a huge fan, personally. This one looks really cool, I think, this side panel. Rather, the top panel, I should say. But those are always cool art. We'll take a look at the back here. Wow, just look at this T-Rex mini. Even, the comparison here. I can't wait to see how big it actually feels in person. But we got T-Rex and Dr. Sattler as the two fighters. Dr. Ian Malcolm as the sidekick for Dr. Sattler. So, let's go ahead and take a look. So we'll flip through the rule book real quick as always. Entering Jurassic Park. Look at that. Oh, I like the skull on the artwork there. Pretty cool. Standard rules again. I don't think this set really adds anything new to the game rules other than the new large fighter rules, which I assume there's going to be a section in here about the large fighters. Yeah, so it talks about Dr. Sattler. Her ability apparently has to do with insight tokens, and then the large fighter rules, which basically is that I believe the T-Rex, being large, can attack 2 spaces away, and it pretty much occupies 2 spaces in most cases. There are a few exceptions when the spaces are too far apart, but for the most part, large fighters occupy 2 spaces and can attack 2 spaces away. So, pretty cool. Here we see the health dials. Look at this massive health dial. Wow. That's crazy. It's huge. It's got to be that big because she's got 27 health, which is ridiculous. I think it's a she, right? Isn't that what the general consensus was? Here's all the Dr. Sattler and Malcolm tokens with the... or insight tokens, I should say, with the health dials. Cool. And then we get to the new board. Cool. This is what I really want to see. I've not really spoiled any of this myself, so here's the back. It's going to be the Tyrannosaurus paddock, as we see here. And let's take a look. Alright, so it looks like a basic map. No new mechanics as far as I can tell. There's no one-way arrows like the raptor paddock. So it's just a really basic map. It looks pretty tight though, not very big. There's not a lot of different zones. So, I don't know, this is going to be an interesting one. I'm guessing maybe some of these spaces here, like here and here, are spaces that T-Rex does not occupy both. Maybe because there's the cars in the way, and then this looks like kind of a long path. So, we'll see after testing, but cool map. I mean, pretty basic, but let's move on. So we have the decks here. We'll show off those in a little more detail later after I crack them open. Got a little copyright slip here. Okay. And let's take a look at this mini. This is what we really want to see, right? The T-Rex mini. Not so mini, is it? I mean, this thing is massive. This is really, really cool, actually. Just looking at this thing and actually holding it makes me a lot more excited about playing T-Rex. I wasn't super hyped up about it, actually, leading up. But wow, this thing is way cool. Can't wait to see it on the board. No base, like, ring for the T-Rex. Interesting. And then we'll see Dr. Sattler. See if I can get a good focus here. I mean, pretty basic mini. Just a standard human pose. Nothing too exciting there. And then we have Dr. Ian Malcolm, the sidekick. Open up the token here. Now, anybody who pre-ordered this set, or maybe not even pre-ordered, but ordered it early, got the promo Ian Malcolm mini. So let me show that off. I actually have that here. So here it is in its package. We're going to open it up in just a second. But yeah, this mini is used to replace the sidekick token, which this is the first time we've seen Restoration do something like this, which is really cool because hopefully they'll do more in the future. I would love to have like a jackalope miniature for Bigfoot or a Jabberwock for Alice. I just think that would be way cool. But take a look at this mini. This thing is ridiculous. I can't believe they made this a real thing. But I know people are going crazy for this thing. So highly sought after. Very cool. Alright, so there's that, and let's open up the decks. I mean, here's the T-Rex. Super cool looking card back. I love the purple. Purple is honestly one of my favorite colors, so looks really nice here. So there's T-Rex. And then we have Dr. Sattler. Nice pink to purple mix there. I do like the color scheming on these decks. I'm just not a huge fan of the art style, but I could be proven wrong. I haven't seen the cards. Just based on the box cover, I'm not a huge fan, but the cards might look really good. So we'll find out. Yeah, there you go. There's the cards. I am going to now pause the video. I'm going to go play a game with these and see how they play out in practice. And I will come back to show off all the cards and give some thoughts on what I think of these new decks. But I'm excited to try it out, so I will be back in just a bit. Alright, so I'm back after having played the set here. So let's take a quick look at... the thing I always miss is the artwork on the inside panels. I always forget that's a thing, but it's actually pretty cool that they add that. It's a nice detail. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at the decks here. And before we look at the decks too, I just want to give everybody an actual kind of reference point, I guess, on how big the T-Rex actually is. So if you put it on the board, here it is. And then with a regular sized mini, I guess maybe that's not the best comparison, but if you lay them down, look how massive that thing is. And then you have a sidekick token. So it really is quite a large fighter, which is actually pretty cool. So let's go ahead and get into the deck. Or decks, I should say, plural. So we're going to start with the T-Rex, the one everybody really wants to see. So love the purple card back again. T-Rex is a move 1, which is the first move 1 fighter in the game. It's also the first large fighter, which means she can always attack up to 2 spaces away. And at the end of your turn, you draw a card. Now that's not optional, so you're always going to draw every turn, which actually I don't really think is that great, because being a move 1, you're going to have to boost a lot of your maneuvers. So that extra card draw is really just making up for the cards you're going to be discarding in order to move. So, I mean, it's an okay ability, not great, but it's definitely putting you on a clock from turn 1. So you really just have to make the most out of every one of your turns, because even though you have 27 health, once you run out of cards, you're out of resources. That means you can't defend, you're going to be taking big hits, and you're not going to be able to dish out any more damage. So it's you're really, again, just on a clock from turn 1, so got to make the best of what you have. Alright, so the first card we're going to see here is Thrash. So it's a 2-value versatile. During combat, you may boost this card. After combat, if you won the combat, deal 1 damage to each opposing fighter in T-Rex's zone. 3 copies of this card. So this card is pretty cool because it deals damage to each opposing fighter, so it's a good way to clear out those pesky 1-health sidekicks like the Outlaws or the Hand from Electra or Wukong's clones. So any of those sidekicks are going to be cleared out with Thrash. It's AoE for the whole zone. Pretty cool card. You do have to win the combat, so you might have to boost it, which can be pretty costly, but overall I think it's a solid card to have in the deck. Definitely need tools to get rid of those sidekicks, especially being a solo fighter. So next card up is Terrifying Roar, 3-value versatile. Immediately, fighters cannot leave their space for the rest of the turn. Now this includes all fighters, not just the ones in the combat, so that's actually really cool. But it also includes yourself, so you can't attack first with this and then move away because you wouldn't be able to leave your space. Now this does work against things like Bruce Lee, or for Robin Hood, their abilities to hop back. This will stop those if this is used on defense when they're attacking, so that's pretty neat. There's only 2 copies of this in the deck, but I think it's a really solid card because it just sets up things so well when you play this on defense for your following turn to just be able to make multiple attacks, because again, being only move 1, you don't want to be spending a bunch of actions maneuvering. You want to be attacking, especially when you get that free card draw at the end of each turn. So Terrifying Roar, definitely a solid card. Wish there was 3 copies, but sadly there's only 2. Next up we have Momentous Shift. It's your standard shift, 3-value versatile, bumps up to a 5 if your fighter started this turn in a different space. There's 3 copies of this in the deck, so pretty good damage output. You can use it as a 3-value versatile for defense if you really need to, but I think that's definitely not what you want to be doing with T-Rex. You want to be pushing offense, pushing the aggression constantly, because again, you're on a fuse, a short fuse at that, so you need to be pushing damage where you can get it. Then you have 4 copies of this When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth. 2-value attack, pretty weak. During combat though, you can boost it, similar to the Thrash. And after combat, if you won the combat, draw a card, gain an action, and you take 2 damage. So taking the self damage is unfortunate, but drawing a card, gaining an action is pretty good. 4 copies of this in the deck means you're going to see it very often, and with a 3 boost value, that's pretty solid to boost this card itself or the Thrash, or even just boosting your maneuver, which you're going to have to do pretty frequently. So this card is okay. I don't like the self damage on it. I think that's pretty costly, but it's quite an aggressive card, which maybe is what she needs. It's just a little unfortunate that you have to win the combat to get this effect. I really wish it triggered automatically, or that you didn't take the self-damage, because it puts you in a tough spot when you play this card. So it's okay overall, not the greatest, but at least it's got a high boost value. Next up, we have 3 copies of Reckless Lunge. So this is the biggest boost value in the deck at a 4. It's the only card that is a 4 boost value, so you can bump up both Thrash and When Dinosaurs Ruled up to a 6 value attack, which is pretty solid. And after combat, if you actually play this, it's only a 3, but you deal 3 damage to the opposing fighter and take 3 damage yourself. 3 copies of this means you'll see it quite often. Again, that boost is nice. Playing this card is not a favorable trade. It's probably an even trade because it's 3-3, each fighter taking 3 damage. But with T-Rex having 27 starting health, it's pretty solid, and I think you want to be taking those trades when you can get them. So, pretty solid card with Reckless Lunge. Next up, you're going to see 15,000 pounds of muscle. Again, a nice boost value of 3. Only 2 copies of this one in the deck. Another 3 value attack that says during combat, ignore the value of your opponent's card. Now this is non-conditional, so it's always going to ignore, unless of course it's fainted. Now after combat you take 2 damage. So this is a great card to actually attack with because it's either a 3 to 2 damage trade, which is favorable for you, and if it gets fainted, then at least it stops the auto damage part, so it's a 1 to 0 trade, which proportionally stays the same. Your opponent taking 1 more damage than you will be taking. So if this gets fainted, you're fine with that. And if it's not fainted, you're going to get 3 damage through. So very good card here. I think one of the better attacks in the deck. Sad that there's only 2 copies, but a good card nonetheless. Next up, we're going to see 3 copies of Commanding Impact. So Commanding Impact, great card. This is the one card in the deck that you actually want to get fainted, other than maybe the 15,000 pounds of muscle like we just talked about. But this is really the punish for the feint, because everything else is pretty solid to feint, honestly, because they're low values with kind of crazy effects. And this thing is going to deal 3 over a feint if you can bait that out. So with 3 copies, it's pretty reliable, and it's just a big card and a lot of, reliable card draw, because drawing 1 card after combat is not bad. And if fainted, you don't even have to draw, which in this deck is probably a good thing. But 3 copies of Commanding Impact is definitely solid. Love to see that. And strangely enough, this is the biggest value attack in the deck, which I didn't expect. I thought we were going to see maybe like some 7s or maybe even an 8, just blank value card in T-Rex, because it's a large fighter. I thought we'd just see some really big hits. But surprisingly, Commanding Impact is going to be the strongest printed value in the deck. Then we'll move on to You're Just Making Her Angry. So this is the only actual defense-specific card. Only a 1 value is very low, very poor. Boost value is awful at a 1. This is the lowest boost value card in the deck. It says, during combat, you may boost this card, and after combat, if you won the combat, return this card to your hand. Now, that seems appealing at first, because getting a card that is recurring back to your hand is really strong, and it almost always gives you defense, but you're throwing away a card that could be probably used on offense to get back a card that is actually a poor value defense. So I don't think that's a good trade in the long run, because again, you're on a fuse, so T-Rex only wins by being aggressive and pushing the damage to finish off your opponent before they can chew through your 27 health, because in the long run, fatigue is going to kill you. You're going to run out of resources, so you need to be using all of your cards to push damage, not just block opposing damage onto you. You have enough health where you can afford to take some hits and not be spending cards on a card like this. So I really don't like this card. I think it's probably the worst card in the deck, and it seems appealing on the surface, but I think in practice you're just going to find that this is not a very good card. So I think if you can use it to boost your maneuver whenever possible, if they're just barely out of your range, you probably want to be using this to boost. And I do think that might come up pretty often, because if you're against a move 3 fighter, let's say, a melee move 3, so if you go up and attack them, and then they start adjacent, they want to attack you first action and then maneuver away, well, now they're 3 spaces away, which you can hit 2 spaces away, but that's still, you can't get far enough, because if you maneuver 1 space, then, let's see, I think, then there's still going to be 1 space out of your range. Because you'd be able to catch up to a 2-move fighter, but not a 3-move fighter. So I think this is when you want to use that to boost, so you can catch those 3-move fighters. And next up, we're going to be moving on to some schemes in the deck. So Closer Than She Appears, we've actually seen in Bloody Mary's deck. It's just move up to 1 space, draw a card, gain an action. There's 3 copies in this deck, though, versus Mary, who only has 2. Wish Mary had 3, but sadly only 2 there. But anyways, T-Rex having 3 copies of this is pretty good, because getting that 1 extra space of movement might be all you need to close the gap, and you can draw a card and gain an action, so you can keep pushing that aggression. Then we have 3 copies of Ripples in the Water. This card is actually pretty incredible. You get to place T-Rex in any space in her zone, and then each opponent with a fighter adjacent to T-Rex discards 1 random card. So it's essentially a warp scheme, movement warp, and then if you get adjacent, you're going to make your opponent have a random discard, which is incredibly strong in this game, as we know from cards like Ambush, or even Beowulf's Vigor and Courage this can be compared to. But getting that additional movement is very strong, because if there's body blockers in your way, this lets you just warp and jump right over them, which is very, very good. Not to mention, in a 2v2 or a free-for-all, this could make multiple opponents discard a random card, which is very good. But in a straight 1v1, when it refers to opponent, that is only your opponent. You don't get to make them discard a card for each opposing fighter. It's just that one singular opponent. So, very cool card, one of the best in the deck. I just love this card. And then, last but not least, we're going to see 65 million years of Gut Instinct. So only 2 copies of this scheme, but it lets you choose a card in your discard pile other than itself and add it to your hand. When I say itself, I mean this named card, not this individual copy. So even though you have 2 copies in the deck, you cannot loop this card for infinite passes. Even though that would not even be good in a deck like this, because you draw at the end of the turn, but I digress. So this card gets to get back anything, including the schemes, so you can get back extra Ripples in the Water for more random discards. That's very strong. You could get more Closer Than She Appears to just close the gap more often, and you can even get some of your powerful attack cards, like that 15,000 pounds of muscle, just to guarantee you're going to be pushing more damage. So the versatility is great. You get to pick what you need to fit the situation, but being able to get schemes back, unlike Daredevil, who with Breather has to get a combat card, I think this card is pretty crazy and very, very strong, and gives you some flexibility that I think is definitely needed in a deck like this. So happy to see this card at 2 copies. And that's it for the T-Rex. Now, some thoughts. I think she's not going to be all that great, because I think people will be able to exhaust her very easily. Being move 1 means you essentially have to boost nearly every maneuver that you make, and so your opponent is going to run away a lot, and you're just going to run out of cards in the long run. So again, you just have to push the damage while you can get it. You never want to be whiffing a turn where you have to double maneuver. Maybe you can afford to double maneuver once, maybe twice max in a game, but if you do it any more than twice, I think you've just lost too much opportunity. It's kind of an opportunity cost there. And I think you want to be playing cards like 15,000 pounds of muscle and the Reckless Lunge, so that you can just get the damage through even though you're hurting yourself. I know you want to probably boost Reckless Lunge too, because of the 4 boost value. So with attacks like Dinosaurs Ruled or with a Thrash, you want to bump up to that 6 value, but it might be better to hold on to Reckless Lunge to be used as its own attack and boost using something like it's hard, because Terrifying Roar is something you really want to keep, but I think you would want to boost Dinosaurs Ruled with another copy of itself, if at all possible. I think the self damage is just kind of detrimental there, and yeah, it combos, but T-Rex is not really a combo fighter, so you can't rely on running them out of defense. You just have to hit big through their defenses, is my first impression. Now, I didn't play T-Rex, I played Sattler. 2 games I played, and Sattler won both of them. And the second game was very close. The first game was pretty much a blowout. T-Rex is interesting, though. I mean, I think people will definitely enjoy her. In certain matchups, though, it's going to be very frustrating, because your opponent is just going to be able to run and never engage in combat. That'll be quite annoying. But it's going to be an interesting puzzle to figure out. I think you probably want to hold on to your cards to use on offense rather than defense. So you might be okay taking some undefended hits. You can Again, play the blue card if you have it, but it's only one value, right? And if you're not planning on boosting it, you might as well hold this card in hand to boost your maneuver. So I don't think that's really worth playing. And I think, obviously, Momentous Shift you don't want to play on defense. Terrifying Roar is probably the only defense that you want to actually play because it can help set up double attack turns for your following turn. And Thrash is okay on defense, but it's probably better used on offense just to bait out one of their cards and potentially get some damage over the top. So it's going to be cool to see if people can actually, win games, I guess, with T-Rex. I don't want to sound super negative on it, but it's not easy to play by any means. You can get definitely punished if you're not playing a matchup correctly, because that infinite card draw is going to kill you along with all the self-damage effects. So you're going to have to just optimize your card usage, and that's going to be a tricky puzzle to figure out, but I think actually quite fun in a lot of matchups. So looking forward to trying her out myself, and let's move on to Sattler. So with Sattler, here is the card back again, nice and kind of a pastel color scheme here with the pinkish and purplish, pretty cool. But let's look at Sattler. So she's a move 2 hero, melee, 13 starting health. Her ability reads, after Dr. Sattler or Dr. Malcolm move, place an insight token in their new space. You can have 5 insight tokens. So Dr. Ian Malcolm is the sidekick, also melee, 7 starting health. That's pretty low health totals overall, only makes 20, but man oh man is there a lot of healing in this deck, as we will see in just a moment. But going over the ability, just to clarify, this only places the insight token when you move. So if you get placed in a space, some kind of warp-like effect, like a bewilderment, you will not put an insight token there because you were placed in that space, you did not move. If it is moved with something like a skirmish, however, or a rending shot by your opponent, you did move. Even though they moved you still moved, and you get to place down the token. And also, it's not you get to, it's mandatory, so you have to place down a token every time you move, as long as there are tokens available. Now, you have 5 of them that you start with, and this is just an explanation card. You can read this if you like, but I'm going over it anyways. So if you're out of tokens, you cannot place any more onto the board if there's none in the supply. Now, the supply is 5 max, and there are cards that will remove them from the board, and it puts them back to the supply, versus Muldoon, who puts his tokens back to the box after he's used them. So in the box means you don't get to reuse them, but in back to the supply, in this case, you do get to reuse them. So you will be placing and removing, but you can only have 5 max at a time, and if all are on the board, you can no longer place any more for the time being. So let's go ahead and get into the cards. So the first card we're going to see is the Concept of Attraction. So it's a 2-value defense card. It's an any, so either of them can use it. 3 copies, and it says after combat you may place your fighter in any space with an insight token. So again, we see the word place. So you can double up on insight tokens. Granted, that's not a good thing to do, but you can double up if you were to move onto a space that already has a token and you have tokens in the supply. But with this, when you place your fighter in a space with an insight token, you will not place a new second token in that space. So interesting card. It's a low value, but it does let you kind of warp around the board to anywhere that you have already moved into. So it's all right. Next, we're going to see the better of the blue defense cards. This is called Lock the Doors. Another any, 2 copies of this. After combat, deal 2 damage to the opposing fighter, and then move your fighter up to 2 spaces. And remember, it's an any, so either Sattler or Malcolm can play this. And it's kind of like a counterpunch. It's non-conditional, though. You don't have to be adjacent, so it'll still work against ranged. You're just going to straight up deal 2 damage to the opposing fighter unless this is canceled, which it's a defense card, and cancels are normally played on defense. So this is very unlikely to be canceled. So quite a powerful card. And you get 2 spaces of movement afterwards, which, again, that will place an insight token because it's moving the spaces, not placing. So really, really powerful card here. I guess, thank goodness, there's only 2 copies in the deck. And next up, we're going to see the only red card in the deck, actually, called You Never Had Control. That's the Illusion. For Dr. Sattler specifically, 3 copies of this. Reads, during combat, increase the value of this card by the number of insight tokens on the board, and then you remove all insight tokens from the board.
So this card is potentially a upwards of a 7 value attack, which is incredibly strong. Granted, if it is fainted, it'll be 2/2, and no damage will go through. But wow, this card's potential is crazy. Having 3 potential 7s in deck is ridiculous. And seeing as you don't really have to do anything to put tokens on the board other than just maneuver or just move at all, it'll be pretty easy to build up the power level of this card. And sure, you have to remove them, but I mean, that's not really a big punish if you can just regenerate them very quickly. And also, it's when either of your fighters move, you place a token. So if you do a single turn of double maneuvering while you have your sidekick alive, that's going to be 4 tokens. You go from 0 tokens to 4 tokens with a single turn of double maneuvering. So it's really easy to get them back. So a card like this, it's not really a big punish to remove them all, as long as you play smart. So having 3 potential 7s in deck, very, very powerful. So then the next card, we're going to see another payoff for having a lot of insight tokens on the board. And this is called Woman Inherits the Earth. And I honestly think this is probably the most broken card in the deck. It's a 2-value versatile. It reads immediately, draw 1 card. Dr. Sattler recovers health equal to the number of insight tokens on the board. Remove all tokens from the board. So similar to the last card, it will remove them all after the effect goes through. But this is 5 potential healing. And it's immediate, which is the huge thing. So you can't even get her down to a lethal threshold and kill her over the top of this defense, because this will trigger before combat damage goes through. And that is really where I think this card becomes broken, because if this was an after combat, it's kind of like Looking Glass with Alice. You get down to these game states where you can't safely defend with this card because there's the potential that you just die in combat before your healing triggers. But with this being immediate, you don't have to worry about that, and that just makes this card totally broken, in my opinion. An extra card draw is also nice, and with 3 copies of this in deck, I think the healing potential is just through the roof, and this card is just insane. So I'm a little bit concerned about what this card is going to do, but it's very powerful and definitely probably the best card in her deck. And then we're going to see 3 copies of Violently if necessary. So a 3-value versatile, again specific to Sattler. After combat, deal 2 damage to each opposing fighter on or adjacent to a space with an insight. So this is kind of like Bloody Hell from Spike, but it's 2 damage, and it's incredibly easy to use. I mean, if you're against a melee fighter, when you move, you have to place a token underneath you, so if you end your turn, they move up and hit you, they're already adjacent to you, or adjacent to an insight token, so they're going to take the 2 damage. So super easy to pull this off. It's also each opposing fighter, so if you have the insight tokens littered around the board, and that's a potential blowout for cards, or not cards, but fighters like Robin Hood, who have a bunch of outlaws lying around, in addition to Robin Hood himself. So very hard to play around this because it's on or adjacent, and it's going to just be very, very strong against fighters with multiple sidekicks. So 3 copies of this in the deck, I think, is huge. Just another source of auto damage on top of Lock the Doors, which we've already seen. Next one up is Sexism in Survival Situations. So there's only 2 copies of this. It's a 1-value versatile for Sattler, but during combat, if the opposing fighter is a hero, the value of this is a 4 instead. So having a 4-value defense against a hero is very good. And after combat, you may move Dr. Sattler 1 space. It's optional, so it's 0 spaces or 1 space. Again, moving will place a new insight token, which is always relevant. And just a solid value defense. It's kind of like a skirmish in a way, but only 1 space of movement instead of 2, but it's also non-conditional upon winning combat, so it's always going to let you move. So quite a strong card. Next up, we're going to see 3 copies of I Think We're Back in Business. And it reads, during combat, the value of this card is equal to the number of cards in your hand. Now, that can be upwards of a 6-value defense, which is insane. It can also be upwards of a 7-value attack, once again, because if you start your turn with 7, you maneuver up to 8, you attack with this card, so you have 7 others in hand, so very strong potential here. Of course, if it gets fainted, that's a pretty big punish, but it, there's 3 copies of this in the deck, so you're going to see it quite often. There's a 3 boost value on this, which can also be relevant if you need to boost away. And this card is really just very similar to Control the Demon from Ghost Rider, which is another really strong card. We've seen how strong a 5-value defense can be. This card being a potential 6, just means that even a beast form does no damage unless boosted up. So just a stupidly strong card. I think this is, again, one of the strongest cards in the deck, and with 3 copies, it's going to be very annoying to play around, and it's just, I think, going to make her have an incredibly strong defense game. Then we're going to see 3 copies of Feint. It's your standard Feint. 3 copies is always good to see. Interesting to note that the T-Rex had no feints, so no cancels at all for T-Rex, but Sattler is going to get your standard set of 3. Then you have 2 copies, interestingly enough, of Regroup. So Regroup is probably the worst card in this deck. You never want to defend with it because it's such a poor value. And Sattler, honestly, from my experience, doesn't do a whole lot of attacking. So if you're not attacking much, why would you attack with a Regroup? You'd probably want to hit with one of your potential 7s, or something like Violently if necessary, so that you can deal auto damage. But no real reason to hit with a Regroup. So it's also only a 1 boost value, so not going to help you out too much when it comes to boosting. This is probably the worst card in the deck by far. But I'm happy, honestly, to see some bad cards in this deck, because otherwise it'd be completely broken, because some of these cards are just ridiculous. So next up, we're going to see 1 copy of Hey Hey Hey, and it's an any, and after combat, move your other fighter up to 4 spaces. Now, that's a decent effect, but I think it's better to move the fighter involved in combat rather than the other one, because if you want to defend with a card like this, it's not going to get you out of danger if your opponent still has additional actions that they might be using to attack you with. Now, there's only 1 copy of this card, which is really strange. There's a lot of cards in this deck that are only 1 copy, and it seems pretty random to me, and they're all kind of mediocre, I think. I mean, we'll get to those in just a second, but it's just really weird. I mean, this card's whatever. It's fine, but nothing to write home about. Next up, we're going to see Life Finds a Way. So this card is crazy. It's Malcolm specific, which is the first one of those that we've seen. But after combat, your opponent discards the top card of their deck, and Dr. Malcolm and Dr. Sattler recover health equal to that card's boost value. So it's similar to Take a Knee from Daredevil, where you essentially blind boost and you heal for that amount. But you're blind boosting off of your opponent's deck, which means they're down a card, so closer to fatigue, and you're just healing both of your fighters for potentially ridiculous amounts. Even healing both of your fighters by 2 is crazy. I mean, even 1 is good, because we've seen an effect similar to that in Sherlock's deck with Watson's card, where it heals both of them for 1, and that's pretty solid. But this also mills a card off your opponent's deck, so even better than that. So this card's ridiculous. I'm happy, again, there's only 2 copies in the deck, but wow, what a good card here. Definitely a payoff for having Malcolm still alive and in the fight. So next up, we're going to see a Malcolm specific called Chaotician. After combat, place an insight token in any space on the whole board. Now, it's only a 2-value versatile, and this is another one of those 1 copy cards, so really nothing special. 3 boost value at least is okay, but I don't think you really want to defend Malcolm with this, because he's only got 7 health to begin with, and this is only a 2 value. And why would you want to attack with this and put Malcolm in danger? It just doesn't seem very good. Honestly, I think some of these single copy cards, they really just put into the deck for the artwork, which is, I mean, that's fine if that's the case, but yeah, Chaotician, not that great. Next up, we're going to have another 1 copy, so Must Go Faster. It's an any this time. After combat, if you won the combat, you may place Dr. Malcolm and Dr. Sattler in any space. So again, the keyword place means you're not going to be putting the insight tokens, but it places them anywhere, both of them. So you just get to warp both of them, but it's conditional upon winning combat, and you don't win combats very often with only a 3 value. So nothing crazy, but again, just some new artwork. So there you go. And the last card in the deck going to be the Future X Mrs. Malcolm. So again, 1 copy. I think they only made this card so that they could use that artwork, which is funny, but I don't think this card is that great. It's also the only scheme in the deck, interestingly enough. But you draw 2 cards, place an insight token in Malcolm's space, and gain an action. So kind of a random effect. I don't really see much use for this. I don't see why you'd want to draw cards and gain an action unless you're severely low in your hand count and being threatened to take undefended attacks. Otherwise, you just maneuver away, so you get further away, and you're going to end up placing insight tokens anyways from your ability. So that kind of nullifies this first part. Gaining the action, I mean, you're just I mean, it's fine. Again, it's just for extra card draw, but this card is not very good. I think they just wanted to put some extra funny art into the mix. So that is going to be it for Sattler's deck. Now, I played this twice, and I barely did any attacking. So my concern is that this is going to be a very non-interactive deck. Once again, kind of similar to Daredevil and Sherlock, which is kind of concerning. And some of these cards are absolutely broken. Like I said, Woman Inherits the Earth, and I think we're back in business means that the defense values are just huge, and the healing potential is through the roof. And I think she can play a mean fatigue game. And people can oftentimes get frustrated by fatigue-oriented game plans, but we're going to have to see how this plays out in other matchups. When it came to facing the T-Rex specifically, the game plan was just to survive and run away, defend all the attacks, heal when you need to, use Malcolm, I think, as a body blocker, actually, and just outlast the T-Rex until she damages herself or fatigues out to death. So it's kind of a lopsided matchup, I feel like, in the box. It wasn't the worst thing. In our first game that we played, T-Rex went after Malcolm first and killed him off, and then definitely just ran out of steam before coming close to killing Sattler. In the second game, T-Rex ignored Malcolm and just went for Sattler, and it worked out a lot better, got me down to 1 health, and then I drew the Woman Inherits the Earth, and I healed back up to 6, and T-Rex was basically out of steam at that point, so it was game over. But yeah, it seemed like ignoring Malcolm was the way to go. Now, I don't know that that's going to be the case in other matchups, because he does provide some ridiculous healing and milling of your opponent's deck, which is crazy with this Life Finds a Way. So you might want to take him out. Honestly, though, he's kind of like not the best sidekick. The real problem with having him on board is that you get to regenerate your insight tokens twice as quickly, because it's when each of your fighters moves, you put it down. So with a double maneuver turn, like I said, you go from 0 all the way up to 4 instantly. Whereas if you only had Sattler, then you're going from 0 up to 2 in a double maneuver turn. So it leaves a lot more windows for her to get punished without having the best defenses. And it takes longer to build up in order to land these powerful attacks or massive healing. So it just slows her down a lot. But you're also investing cards into Malcolm, which is kind of a waste in the long run. So it's really going to be matchup dependent, and I'm really interested to see how that plays out. But she seems very strong, first impression. Not necessarily broken. I heard a lot of horror stories about Sattler saying she was completely busted and she's going to be Invisible Man on steroids, or she's going to be my new main because she's just a fatigue monster. And sure, that might be the case. It's too early to tell, I think, but my fears are a little bit relieved because I don't think she's that crazy. There's ways to play around her. I think if you pin her, for example, she doesn't have any good way to get out of a pin because a lot of her effects are movement based, not warps. Like, there's the concept of attraction, but it's only a warp to an insight token, and it's also only a defense card. So if you want to sit like with Dracula and ping her down, I think that might work. And then the only other warp is conditional upon winning, which is with Must Go Faster. So if you don't win a combat with a 3, again, that's hard to do, especially as an attack. It's almost impossible. You're not going to be able to warp out of a pin. So pinning can prevent insight token placement, so that might be good. So somebody like the Raptors might be pretty good against her. And yeah, she has some ridiculous, huge value defenses, like I think we're back in business. And this survival situations card is pretty strong, and then Woman Inherits the Earth is ridiculous healing. But she doesn't have a ton of card draw, and if you can just run her out of defenses, then you might be able to get the damage you need quickly to finish her off, since she only has 13 max health. So I think pins will be important. You're going to want to be aggressive on her, though she really doesn't have any passes in the deck. So actually being a move 2 melee fighter with no passes, you can probably play a mean fatigue game right back at her, because when it gets to the point of fatigue, she might have a lot of healing potential, but she's just going to be taking the damage so quickly in fatigue that you're not really going to be able to pull all that off. So that might actually be the counter strategy to beating her, is playing a mean fatigue game yourself. But we're going to have to see. Initial thoughts again, I mean, I think she's very strong, but I think there's a lot of counterplay to be had, and it is going to just take a little while to figure that out. And yeah, that's going to be it for the box reveal and my initial thoughts. Again, I tried to throw in some more strategy and discussion of the decks to kind of combine this with a deck review of sorts. So let me know down in the comments what you thought about that. I know it does increase the length of the video pretty significantly, but hopefully not too bad that it's unbearable, and anybody who really just wanted to see the box opening portion can do so and skip through the rest of the strategy talk. But I think there's a lot of you out there who do enjoy the strategy talk and want the deck reviews. So there you go. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments what you think. And that is going to be the new Jurassic Park 2 set.
And that's going to do it for this one, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed it. But again, make sure you let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed the extra strategy talk. I know it increases the length of the video, but if you weren't interested, hopefully you were able to just skip through it and it wasn't a big deal. So let me know. It'll help me improve the quality of these videos in the future. And speaking of which, be sure to give it a like if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel if you're not already, so that I can continue growing the channel and bringing you all this awesome Unmatched content. And if you liked what you saw with Jurassic Park 2, it is up for sale on the Restoration Games website now. So go ahead and get yourself a copy. And it does have a widespread street date, I believe, of May 18th, which is coming up soon, less than a week. So you should be able to start getting this at your local game stores coming up soon. And I will be testing this on stream live, so if you want to catch those test streams, make sure you follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/ZeroSkater12 and come join in the chat. Maybe we can play some games or just chat about the new sets and everything. I'd love to see you there. It's always a fun time. So catch me on Twitch, and that's going to do it for today. So hopefully you all enjoyed it. Thanks again for watching. I'm ZeroSkater12, and I'll see you next time.